Welcome to this week's Master Coaches Weekly Buzz hosted by John Foreman. We continue to give our update to our viewers on the most current issues of women's and men's collegiate volleyball and junior club volleyball and the new trends of the women's professional volleyball leagues and conversations with leaders in our sport, from the AVCA Executive Director Kathy DeBoer to our most recent guest and partners of the Master Coaches Championship Skills Series, SNS Sports Groups, and Baden Sports. Now, let's go to former Olympic coach Mick Haley, who will introduce our special guest today. Mick?
Well, thank you, Ruth. It's really my pleasure to introduce Sharon Clark to you today. Sharon is the president of the AVCA Coaches Association, also the head coach of the Butler Bulldogs, who play in Hinkle Arena, I think still. I grew up watching state championships in Hinkle Arena, or Hinkle Fieldhouse, I guess, as they called it, being a Hoosier. So I'm pretty excited to have you on, Sharon. Glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm absolutely excited to be here.
We've got a lot of things to talk to you about today, so I'd like to start with a question for you, kind of a leadership question, and that's what will your leadership initiative be for the time that you're the president of the AVCA? I know when I was president, I got hit with that, and my job was actually, as first president, to try to bring the whole country together as coaches, but I'm interested in what you're thinking that you'd like to get done during your tenure.
Well, that's a great question. Coming into the presidency, I wholeheartedly believed my role was going to be to continue to grow and develop volleyball. It was exciting that at this point we had grown to become, the number one participation sport, in the United States, and that was a great thing. So, I felt like I was coming in, great momentum, a lot of work that a lot of you had done before me. But I was focused on, what was volleyball going to look like 20 years from now, and how the decisions that would be made during my tenure would shape that. So that's really where I came into the position at convention in December, and January, that's where I was gonna take off and kind of run with things. And that all completely changed. And, life throws all kind of curveballs at you, whether you're in volleyball or anything else. So with this pandemic hitting, it has completely changed the way that we will do things, and there will be no return to normal in our sport or any other sports. And so, I found my platform being more about how we can come out of this better as a sport than we were going in. And there's so many areas that we had not thought about in years because we didn't have to, because things were going really, really well. And so I think the biggest thing for me moving forward is crisis management, health and safety, and how to continue to grow our sport, but do it in a way that's going to be best for our athletes, our coaches, and our fans and spectators. And that's pretty full plate moving forward.
Well, and those are all opportunities, as I see them. I mean, we have a lot of negatives going on, but when that happens, it opens up opportunities. I'm gonna pass you to Brian Gimmillaro, the three-time national championship coach at Long Beach State and all-time great coach. Brian, why don't you take it over here?
Make sure I'm on here. Since you brought up the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, how do you envision the upcoming season at the college level, the women's upcoming season, in terms of how are we going to have one? What do you think it's going to look like? I know I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball, but how do you envision this upcoming season?
Yeah. Well, let me say this first. My standard line is, for the first time, college coaches are just going to be happy to play. A lot of the whining and complaining we've done about a lot of things in the past are kind of secondary. So we'll be thrilled just to take the court against anybody else. I think, really what I envision at this point is that, we're very hopeful that we will have a season. I think things will be very regionalized, and I think that's pretty clear that a lot of travel has been cut down and will continue to be cut down a little bit, which is okay. I think getting back to playing for the joy of playing. And although we're all competitive and we want to win and have great RPIs, I think at this point, the season is going to look like really being able to take the court and play as many games as possible. I think preseason will look different for a lot of conferences and a lot of teams, and that they won't necessarily be able to play the full allotment of that. But at this point, our championship, the NCAA has said that they're going to keep our championship where it's at date-wise, and so we look for some semblance going forward, but with such a long break with our athletes, I think everyone's very clear that our start times and our competition start will be different across the country. So there will be some people who will not have a preseason, some who will have maybe a week or two before their conference, and then some who might be able to squeak in most of it.
What do you see when the season starts in terms of health? Is there any talk about, or what is the opinion that if somebody gets sick, what is going to happen?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate to be on the Big East COVID-19 task force of how we're going to do it with our athletes and trying to talk through that. So there are a lot of great doctors on and epidemiologists and trying to work through all of this. I think the biggest thing for volleyball is, we're going to have to figure out how to keep not just our athletes safe, but our coaching staff, our table crew, officials. I mean, there's so many areas that actually are very close. So when a play gets made, it's not like we have an official up with a camera. They're standing right there on the court. And so those are some of the things that we're trying to work through right now, is how to keep everyone safe. I think we all recognize that the age group of the population of volleyball players in college are the least susceptible to being seriously ill, but they're also the highest carriers, right? So they're carrying it around without symptoms, and we have a lot of other people that they're going to come in contact with. I think the part two for it, Brian, is that college students are college students, and we can try as hard as we want to socially distance them and keep them wrapped up in a bubble. When they leave practice, when they leave our facilities, when they go eat, and that's where a lot of the difficulty is going to come in. It's really about education and training, and as coaches, we're going to have to take a really hard line with them on really taking it seriously, because they can get someone else sick or get sick. And I think campuses are going through the biggest challenge in their risk management history. And that's why, the Cal State system, I suspect that's why they just said, we're not ready to do it. And I think some other people are trying to figure it out, but, volleyball and sports, college sports in general, we're going to have to fall in line with campuses to keep everybody safe. And we'll have to do some quarantining. We'll have to do testing. We'll have to do, it's just a variety of different things, but every campus is going to have to decide that for themselves.
Yeah, I'm going to switch this over to Bob Bertucci. Bob was a head coach at the men's Division I level right now, but in the past he was a head coach at Division I level for women. So his experience is incredibly valuable. Bob?
Thanks, Brian. Sharon, what I'd like to do is just maybe drill down to some of the specifics of what you started to address a little bit for any of the college coaches that might be listening right now. You talked about preseason being a little bit different. Do you anticipate it starting at different times, the length of it being different? How does that look to you right now? Shortened maybe?
I think the biggest thing is preseason, it's going to be different again across the country, right? So, we have some states that are much more conservative or had much higher rates, so they need to be much more conservative. So they're not going to allow their athletes to come back maybe as soon. And the real question is, when does each campus allow their athletes to come back to start to train slowly to bring them back on? And those dates completely dictate the first time you can compete against someone. So, I know for us in the Big East, we've got St. John's and Seton Hall right in New York, New Jersey. There, and Georgetown and DC, they're going to be much further behind than maybe a Creighton and Omaha, because those states were very different and those areas are very different in terms of what stages they are as a state. I think conferences now, because of the hit that universities have taken, the financial hit, there are several conferences that have already really made some specific choices in terms of what their teams will do. Some people have cut down their maximum number of competitions. Some have already, told their programs to go regional, so you will only play regional. I know that Stanford has said, hey, you got to stay within 400 miles, like no flights back east or any of that. So that's how, it's going to change things, because a lot of us spend a lot of time trying to schedule our preseason for RPI, and right now that's not necessarily at the forefront. It's more financial for campuses, and then safety and health for our student athletes and our staffs.
Okay, and you've also addressed that the NCAA is still planning on keeping the tournament format the same, the number of teams, the length of the championship. Yet I'm hearing a lot of schools like Sacred Heart are going to go through Thanksgiving, and then at Thanksgiving, stop and not come back until January. That's going to put, an increased burden on athletic departments to fund students staying after a school, actually closes. Have there been some talk about that, and what are you thinking about that now?
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of discussion. There are several schools that have publicly announced that they are moving up their start date for the academic year, and they're ending. I would say the trend wholeheartedly is, if your students leave your campus for Thanksgiving, that they do not come back beyond that. I know my son goes to Santa Clara. At Butler, both campuses have already said departure at Thanksgiving, and then finish classes and finals online. And so that's definitely the trend. I think there are quite a few universities who are moving towards that. And again, this is a safety measure, because once they all depart and go off into thousands of different spaces across the country and internationally, then to try to bring them back is, that's very risky. I think where it plays into things for us and our championship is, how will we manage that? The upside, I actually believe, is that the campuses will be empty. If we continue to train, just like, we do whenever it's Thanksgiving break and we're in the middle of our conference tournaments. If we continue to train, we have less exposure because there's so fewer students on campus. The part that the NCAA is going to have to make a decision on is travel and seating, and how that's going to all play out, with so many teams not really playing across the country. I think it's going to be a really tall task for the committee to do a great selection, because there'll be lots of schools that don't have enough common opponents. And so that's going to be difficult, but that's what we're here for. That's what people are getting paid for, is we got to do the tough stuff. I was speaking to Erin, who's on our committee for awards, and I told her this weekend, you will absolutely have the toughest job ever to do the All-American Awards this year. Like, there's just no comparison. I feel for you and your committee, so armor up and get ready, because it's going to be tough.
So is there any of the specifics that you'd like to address? I think you might have, in the big picture, might have addressed it in that, hey, we just better be happy that we can get on the court and play volleyball and just do the best we can. One thing I would say, Bob, is I hope that coaches are using this time right now to truly educate themselves, because at the end of the day, they're going to be responsible. When we board a bus and I put all of them on there, all 20 people are resting on my shoulders. I've got to get them somewhere safely. I've got to check them into hotels. I've got to get them somewhere to eat or bring food in. And I think that the more that our coaching staffs are educated, the better we can do that and get them back to campus safely each time that we do that to play. Right. Well, I think, there's just not too much we can do more about the specifics. I think we have to look at, the bigger picture. And I know Ruth, who's had lots to do over her career with different types of athletes, different, minorities, the whole spectrum. I think she has some bigger picture questions to ask you. So I'm going to turn it over to Ruth.
Bob, thanks. And Sharon, again, we appreciate you being here. And I was just trying to reflect back 50 years ago, which some viewers can't even think back 50, but Penny was 10 years old and she was in elementary school. And I had a supervising teacher at John F. Kennedy Senior High School, and she was an Afro-American. She was the first person that was not only a role model for me, but she was also a mentor for me. And then I had the privilege of just going out into the world and just being very open-minded about every aspect, no matter about learning. I mean, I may train a 2-year-old and I learned something that I can help a player that's playing professionally. And I think of, I've had from Flo Hyman, Rose Major, Cheryl Moore, Rita Crockett, Ruth Nelson, Danielle Scott, Penny Lucas. I mean, I just believe, and this is what my thought is, speaking from someone like myself, I must not look through things in a microscope because it becomes very narrow at the bottom of the microscope. I must do what you mentioned in your article, out of the fog. What does your periscope look like? I really would like you to share some of that, but I wanted to share something that I've not shared with people before. So I want to hear from you.
Yeah, when I was writing that, it really just came. And like I said, I was writing about how we're going to come out on the better side of the pandemic. And then all the social unrest and social injustice stuff hit. And, it shook me to my core. Like I said, I'm the wife of a large black man who was a great athlete in college, and I have a son who, every time I see someone getting killed out there for no reason, I look and I see them in their faces. And so I asked myself, what does this mean to me in the volleyball community? And so that's really where that came from. And I thought, volleyball has afforded all of us so much. It's a great sport, but it has given us a lot. It's given us great lives and our families and that type of thing. The one thing I felt like volleyball hadn't given was a complete perspective. And so, I wanted to just take a moment and help provide a little more perspective for those little brown and black faces that have come up through the ranks. So a lot of those young women that you speak of, a lot of the young men who are even more in the minority on teams that they play on. You all, Mick has, Brian has. When I was growing up, I'm watching you, and I was inspired by seeing black players on your teams, right? Bob doesn't know this, but I watched his team play when he was at Temple. And to see Asian women and Indian women and all that kind of stuff, but we had to do it kind of silently, like we'd go in the gym and be thrilled that there was somebody else on another team there. Then we had to act tough, like we didn't want to talk to her, but we really did, So I think that, today I think volleyball has such a platform. And I'm not sure we always use it to the betterment of society, to be a part of society, but I really hope we do right now. We've let our sport kind of run away from us in terms of it's just more and more and more. It's more money, it's more time, it's more travel, it's more. And I really will go back to what Mick said. This is an opportunity for us to take a look at our sport and kind of come back down to the ground a little bit and recognize that we have excluded large populations of people for our sport. We're a country club sport. We've made it too expensive. And so we automatically exclude some amazing people. And the irony of all of this is, Ruth, I wrote my master's dissertation on this very topic, that we were excluding people because it was becoming such a big deal for club and everything. And here we are 30 years later from when I graduated with the master's, and it's the same thing, right? And we're a multi-billion-dollar sport, multi-billion-dollar. So I really want to make sure that as we come out of this fog and we move forward, that we regroup and think about being inclusive in volleyball. And that there's nothing wrong with wanting more brown faces on teams, on official stands, in the coaching ranks, as administrators over the sport of volleyball, that we have to have a voice in that, and we have to see the beauty in it. And it was always interesting to me that we never got it, because as you funnel up the best in our sport to the top, our Olympic teams, I've been to 3 Olympics, and our Olympic teams on the women's side were always very dark. There were a lot of brown girls out there playing. But as you go back down, it became so few. So I just want people to know that if you look at the perspective, if you add more perspectives to the table, that our sport can be even better than it is now.
Wow. So Mick, I know you had another question. Let's get him off mute, huh? Well, we got to get him off mute. Okay, Mick, are you there?
He's trying.
He must not have much to say, huh, Sharon? Can you imagine Mick Haley not having anything to say? Okay, there he is.
You know, Sharon, Ruth mutes me every so often when she thinks that I'm not politically correct, and she's got this button that she just hits.
Got control.
And I
She does it to
the
me
talking
too.
head.
She does it.
Well, I have heard that your son is quite a good volleyball player, and I got that from a special source. But in the process of doing all of this, and you know, I inherited on the Olympic team Danielle Scott and Tara Cross Battle from Brian's program, and they were absolutely the leading forces for our team going into the Olympics. And Ruth was the first person out there to really recruit many of the minority athletes, and she named a number of the people that she had at Houston, LSU, and at Iowa that were really good. And you writing your article certainly had all of us thinking in a number of different directions. It must have taken a lot for you to not only put that down on paper, but send it out to all of the coaches. Have you had a lot of responses?
I have. You know, I will say the response has been pretty overwhelming, in a very good way. You know, I've heard from a lot of people I know and a lot of people I would never have known. And so for that, I absolutely feel like it was worth it. It wasn't hard for me to write it. It's a lot of what I've been thinking for a long time. The difficulty was, for once, I just didn't take the time to try to worry about how it would offend somebody else. I just simply put it out there. And I'm glad I did, because what I found is, what I suspected but I didn't know is, it has given some other people their voice, given them the opportunity to kind of speak up a little bit and feel comfortable and confident to do that. But more than that, it's just validated for a lot of our coaches that they're not crazy and they're okay, that they've been through some stuff and people need to know it, you know? I honestly hope that everyone who coaches in the sport of volleyball at some point in their career has the opportunity to coach someone who is ethnically different than they are. And all of you can attest to what a blessing it is when you get that opportunity and you really can, you know, get a different perspective.
All right. Vic, are you still there?
I am, but that's a lot to digest. And as president of the Coaches Association, it really gives you a forum right now and support by all of the people that you've heard from to really move forward, and not only just these issues, but all of the issues we've talked about today. So I hope you know that at least Master Coaches is behind you, and we will constantly be strong in our support here for you, and to have a leader that's willing to stand up and put herself out there. We need leadership. All of us have talked about Bob Bertucci back at Tennessee had a couple of the best players in the country who are still out there leading as junior coaches and that sort of thing. So we'd like to wish you luck. We'd like to let you know we support, and feel free to call on us whenever you can.
I will do that. I so appreciate it. And I want all the coaches out there to know that they have a voice, and we can all do a great job of moving volleyball forward and making it even better than it is now. It's a great sport, but we can make it better. So, and I thank you guys for just spending the time with me.
Well,
Thanks.
we really appreciate you being on also, and following you next week, we're going to have Wade Gerard, who I know you're familiar with, who's the executive director of the First Point Volleyball Foundation. And he's going to talk directly about what First Point has been doing in this regard. Also, a whole new minority conference coming forward for us. And, I hope people will tune in and listen to what Wade's got to say, because John Spraw and Wade Gerard and the whole board of directors at First Point, assisted by you, I understand. I'm sure Wade's trying to get your son to play varsity volleyball at college, because he says he's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so
I think he might be going to Sacred Heart. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
I'll work on that for you, Bob. I'll work.
Bob, you got to come up with that scholarship for sure.
That's true.
Yeah,
I'm back to
I'm
First Point.
so excited for First Point and what they're doing. And, you know, I've been an advocate the whole time and an ally. And it's exciting to get that conference all started at once. Like, that's just amazing. So, you know, we throw our support behind it, and we want men's volleyball to just boom and be bigger and better than ever. So, yeah, we're behind it. I'm 100% behind it.
Well, that's great. Well, we're going to move that way next week. Thanks so much for being on. And Ruth, I'm going to throw it back to you to close.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Hey, a special shout out to all those coaches that have attended one of our Championship Skills Series clinics. For those interested in hosting, contact us at info@volleyballmastercoaches.com. Now, watch out for the upcoming series, Journey of the Legends, that will feature interviews with Master Coaches Mick, Bob, Brian, and Ruth. Join us next week for Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz. Follow us on Facebook at Volleyball Master Coaches, and Instagram and Twitter, VB Master Coaches. Now back to our special host, who's put up with us for 8 weeks now, John Foreman, who will update us on the coaching conversations.
Has it really been 8 weeks? Wow.
Yeah.
And how many more weeks do we have? Six more weeks?
16.
All right. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Sharon, for coming out and speaking with us. This week in Coaching Conversations, 2 sessions on Saturday. The first one, Ruth will actually be joining me on. We have a coach from Oman who's an FIVB course instructor. He's going to give us some interesting perspective on some international coaching, working with youth, and the things that he does. And in the afternoon on Saturday, we're actually going to be talking about historically black colleges and universities with Penny, who's been an attendee today, and also Rose Majors. So that should be a really interesting conversation, especially in the light of what's going on with the development of more sports on the men's side. So I look forward to that. So hopefully we'll see everybody on Saturday, and also back next week for the next weekly buzz. And have a good rest of the week, everyone.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thanks, John.
Thanks again, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon.